A movie is an audiovisual experience, but we often do not realize the contribution of the soundtrack to this experience. The role of a sound recordist is often underrated. Reviewers do not mention them. The public is not aware of them, and the media does not catapult them to the realm of stars. Theirs is the most technical, the most subtle, and the most invisible job.
I tried to do a lot of experiments of my own, how it is when it is too loud, how it is sounding, what people react. Like for instance, I did use one sound, one utensils falling sound in Bhalo Theko, that Gautam Haldar's film, which I placed it purposely in the back track, and all the 900 people, they looked at that speaker, they thought something is breaking there. So I thought this is not done.
I think you should let the story flow. Ultimately, it's not the question of the sound dictating anything about the movie. It's just the question of people enjoying the story. People don't go to hear sound. People just go to watch the movie. You should have to enjoy the movie.
I think that at least in my films, the sound recordist has a preeminent role.
The job of a sound recordist begins with a location recording of sound. Ideally, it should begin much earlier. Sidney Lumet says, immediately after the spotting session with the composer, I have my second meeting, a session with a sound editor and his entire department. If possible, we try to come up with a concept of sound effects. I don't know what was discussed in Apocalypse Now, but a concept was clearly at work to create an unearthly experience in sound, emerging from the realism of the sound of the battle.
I think it's very important to have a sound design plan or sound design meeting before going in for a shoot.
I got the script some 2 months back, and I started reading. It's in English, and I started reading it, and it's a kind of thing you are making it in your mind first. You start hearing it in your mind, actually it hears, and during shooting also you get lot of ambience. What kind of atmosphere you are getting actually. We are shooting on a building top in Calcutta, some 8-story with that. So you got that garret atmosphere, kaisa hai, what is happening there, everything you see, and you record ambient sound also. And after that, after the editing, you see the picture. So when you see the picture, the colors, everything, each and every scene actually you feel what can be done. There are a lot of options. The first part is to how to eliminate the unwanted things. And after that, you start putting in sounds actually. You start putting in sounds without editing. Then you start hearing the sounds. Then you sit and edit properly, eliminating process.
It's a kind of process actually.
Yeah,
you basically stay and live with that script, and you are there in the process of shooting also. Then you discuss with the director of
Director should be there because he is actually conceived the idea. It's actually his film.
The shooting location, at least in India, is usually a noise cauldron. Even if the crew is disciplined, 2 undesirable sound effects that are totally unavoidable on location are the director's instructions and the whirring of the camera.
Ready, one take. 1, 2, 3, action. Sorry. Okay.
The sound recorded during the shoot is used only as a guide track. Much of the sound we hear in the movies is recorded at the post-production stage, after the rough cut of the film is done.
First of all, the honest truth is that the sound recordists that go for shooting are not the skilled recordists that one would want to use for this kind of a project, for doing actual sound recording. They are people who are good enough only for doing guide tracks. They are not skilled enough to do proper sound recording. Secondly, I mean, again, this is all off the record in a sense. The equipment that is being carried by them is also not up to the mark, in the sense that you know, for most of the film shooting that happens these days, people want to use Nagaras. There's a very good reason for that, because the Nagara can you know, accommodate differences in the camera speed. If the camera speed is not exact, the Nagara has the capability to understand that and compensate. But unfortunately, the Nagaras that exist here in Calcutta are very old, and they are not maintained properly. So the sound quality that they produce are really not usable in today's film technology. The third reason, of course, is that, you know, sound recordists usually are the people who are given the least amount of time. They're never given enough time to set up. Even a good sound recordist, the only time he gets to do a sound check or a sound level is between the time the director says, you know, is everyone ready, and roll camera. So that's a very short amount of time, and you know, people never get enough time to do a proper recording. So any recording that has to happen before people start shooting or after people have shot. Now that's a different kind of mentality, and with the new generation of films coming in, where sync sound is becoming more and more important, that is being done. So there is a new trend where better sound recordists are going.
With the advent of the 535 camera, films like Lagan have been using live sound, and as a result, the sound recordist's role becomes all the more important. Not only does he have to record the dialogue, he even has the option to cut a shot if there's some problem in the recording. I mean, it's no longer in the domain of merely the director and the cameraman to say cut. The sound recordist too can say cut. Not only has he to record the dialogue, he also has to record the ambient sounds.
But recording sound for a documentary film poses a different kind of challenge. It is all about capturing the moment, the candid reality.
Documentary location sound is also very interesting in the sense you have to gather different kinds of sounds and put them together in context of the documentary.
I don't believe that documentaries are documentation. There's some bit which is a created or recreated or reenacted reality. So to the extent that it enhances the reality or enhances the realism, I think there's no problem in using library sounds. But what generally happens is that with documentaries, often people who go and shoot the documentaries will get the real sound, and that's what we generally get to use. It's often not necessary to have to rely upon something that comes from outside. Mostly we do get the sounds from within the track's shot material.
Of all the genres of cinema, perhaps television gives the location recordist the greatest challenge.
There are a lot of wild elephants, you know.
I used to be sent for Prime Minister's coverage, maybe President's. The kind of responsibilities at that age maybe I was quite young those days, I had to take. And challengingly I used to take, I used to love taking challenges. So it gave me a lot of exposure, lot of experience and instantaneous decisions single-handedly. Normally in film media we have to have one assistant, one boom man and do our regular work, and we may take, we may retake, we may not like, okay, retake. But in television film media when I used to work, there was no retake. Prime Minister will not give me retake. So one mistake, your chance is gone. You will be no more in the service, maybe. I think my experience in television gave me a lot of that confidence actually. I did not make any kind of differentiation between Ray and maybe any other director. So all the directors to me become more important, and always important.
Creatively, the most satisfying aspect is the post-production work for a feature film. It is only at this stage that the sound recordist can experiment with contrapunctal sound, that is, sound that contradicts the visuals. Non-sync sound, that is, sound that deliberately does not coincide with the visuals. And suggestive sound, that is, sound that brings out different connotations to the visuals.
Even in this music, we want to make it more slow. Then we are thinking of taking out the rhythm out of this. So how can it be more slow?
Creating realistic sound effects is also a challenge to the sound recordist, and often effects recorded in the studio take on different meanings when played with the visuals.
When there is film work going on, we might have to do Foley effects. Foley means that all the works, like a character in a film is walking, or he's sipping tea, or he's keeping the glass somewhere, or something is breaking down. All these effects has to be created. So we create those effects, we record them, edit them, and then balance them. And whenever necessary, we have to mix them also with the dialogue.
The sound that we are hearing in the movie halls are much more than natural live sounds. They are larger than life. So this building up of this larger than life quality is done, and that's what Hollywood generally calls Foley effects.
The libraries, what we are getting, the sound libraries here, all is done by BBC and all. So anyway, there will be a difference. Calcutta sound and British sound are anyway totally different. So for a Bengali movie, you have to record all the sounds again.
When I point out certain things and others don't seem to notice. But when I make the change and show them the difference, then people realize that yes, that there is a...
While looking at the film, you are also engrossed, you are also in the film. You are also thinking as one of the characters who is watching. Then only things will come out. Mechanically, there is no theory that way. The dialogue is coming, so you have to bring down your music, and no, these are the basic thing, these are the basic thing. I have done so many places where the dialogues I didn't even allow to hear. The music actually developed in such a manner that we need not explain with the dialogues.
To quote Sidney Lumet again, everything becomes creative if the person doing the job is. It's true as well for something that seems as mechanical as sound effects. In the silent era of cinema, the sound accompaniment used to be live. Then came the Vitaphone, sound on disc. Then came sound on film. And now we have surround sound. From the bulky Steenbeck machines, the sound recordist has graduated to working with the mouse. What is in vogue today becomes obsolete tomorrow, and the sound recordist has to keep himself updated with the latest technology.
We used to work in normal rock and roll setup, where analog setup. So digital media, I had to take little pain to understand what is what. In spite of knowing the technology, but unless you use it hands on, experience you have, you will know the difference, you will come to know the difference between analog and digital.
First of all, digital technology has gone to the extent that you can get your final sound output as a digital output on film. Previously, it used to be a mono optical track. Now, mono-optical tracks have severe limitations in the sense that the lows, you don't get so many lows and you don't get so many highs. So they are rolled off both at the bottom end and at the high end, and so the mids are very clear. But then it's a very limited range of sound that you hear from a mono-optical track. With the coming of Dolby Digital, what has happened is that you get full range, full spectrum sound. So it's very clean, and many of the things that we used to be able to get away with at one point of time, we will not be able to do that any longer. So everything has to be much more precise. You cannot hide defects anymore.
We were actually, myself and Gautam Ghosh, we were the first people to think of Dolby or surround mixing system in Bengali film. With the film Dekha, we started it, and then onwards, of course, there are many people they came forward, and since then actually I got the taste of being a sound designer.
I think the most important thing, of course, is that you have to listen to a lot of music, and ideally you should be listening to a lot of different styles of music, and so that you are also capable of doing different kinds of mixes, because all kinds of music have different kinds of mixes. There are different schools of thought in mixing. Getting a good mix, I mean, what is a good mix for you may not be a good mix for me. Different bands and different eras in the music industry, they have done completely different kinds of mixes, and styles have also been dictated by age, by the era. So hearing all these kinds of things will give you the opportunity to be able to do different kinds of things for different kinds of clients.
If you are technically strong and adventurous, you can take the risk of opening your own studio and becoming a sound entrepreneur.
Once I saw that things were looking up, I decided I should maybe concentrate on having a studio of my own, since it was getting a little cumbersome running around looking for bookings in other studios. So we've been in touch all along, and I was telling Anirban that maybe we should do something together. So it just happened to be that we were at a friend's wedding, and we were just chatting away late into the night, and the idea came up. And then I think in what 1 month or 2 months, we were working at it, and in that time he had come back to Calcutta, and we were already looking for financiers and making a project, and in another 8 months time we had the studio.
Being musicians ourselves, mostly we cater to a lot of the musicians crowd which is in Calcutta right now. So that entire side is taken care of by its own course. And we do a lot of films and a lot of ad films as well. And we're doing a lot of Bollywood work also.
We don't wait for the client or the person to walk into the studio and then we hit record. We are going to plan the whole thing. It's as much of an advice, as it's his. So we are going to plan it for that person, that what is the work, the requirement. Then we see how it is to be done actually, which is going to give a good quality output. Then we work on the cost. Then we see if he's okay with the cost. Then if he's not, then we try and economize the project. Then after all these discussions are over, we lay out a plan. Then we go as per schedule, like one by one, so that we know that at the end of the day there's no loose ends.
I think the first thing is just money will not get you anywhere in this field. It's just passion. You will have to put in at least 20 hours a day when you're starting off, and money will have nothing to do with it. Later on there are returns. I'm not saying there aren't returns or anything, but it takes a lot of hard work. If they're willing to go through the grind, then they will get very serious returns. You'll make much more money than normal people do in normal professions.
Even though one may get trained on the job, acquiring a formal training helps to widen one's horizon and bring a touch of sophistication in one's work.
There are different kind of opportunities, like it's up to you personally, because this course is called sound engineering. Some people call it sound recording, some people call it audiography. It's all one, everything is same. So you can go into different directions according to your own. One is like location sound recording for films.
That's one of the most
Now, which is
common
like,
thing nowadays. Everybody.
And the salary, the kind of payment which you get is very high also for that. Another thing, you can get into live music recording of bands, rock bands and all that. Then you can be a part of an orchestra where you are the chief sound recordist or something. Then you can work in studios as a mixing engineer.
Yeah, now what's happening is like music recording, dubbing, that kind of things actually.
So,
and one more thing is like sound design. The new term is coming out nowadays is sound design, like designing a track sound. Actually. It's like a lighting designing for a movie, that kind of thing.
And another thing is that you can concentrate into acoustical designing of cinema theaters, cinema halls and other studios, architectural acoustic designing and all. Then another thing, if you are interested into academics, you can go into the theoretical side and proceed with your own academic research based on sounds.
Actually. Lot of game sounds. Nowadays, yeah, computer.
We have entrance examination, so it consists of 2 papers. One is GK. GK can be anything: Indian culture, arts, history, cinema, music, politics, everything. So then comes the second paper, which is special area aptitude test. For sound, they will ask some basic questions.
Very simple electronics.
Simple electronics, simple physics,
that kind of things.
And some, some aptitude questions like why the sound appears to be like this. That's this kind of things.
Like
it's a very informal kind of interview where
some
they
15 minutes interview. It's a last interview, and most of the panel they don't talk at all. They look at us, and we are sitting, one guy, and 12 guys will be there, and only 1 or 2 guys will be asking. I talked about Kerala. They were talking about Kerala, where you are from Kerala, and what's the specialty of your culture, that kind of thing, your food. And we started arguing about Shah Rukh Khan or Amir Khan, and that kind of thing. Shah Rukh Khan or Amir Khan, who is the best? That kind of thing.
It can be anything. For me, they ask me about the conditions of the cinema halls in Kerala. What kind of films run there? What kind of film has got audience there? How is the kind of sound maintenance which is there in the cinema halls of Kerala and all these things. But it's very on a very kind of friendly and informal level. You can be at ease, absolutely.
The 2 major institutions that offer training in audio engineering are SRFTI and FTII.
The kind of eligibility for the course is it can be graduation in any discipline and physics at +2 level. Some orientation in physics is necessary because most of our seniors, what they have done, the safest option is to join a studio somewhere in Bombay, because you have a kind of a job from 10 to 5 or something like that, or maybe day shift or night shift, and you get a regular salary for that. So if you are doing live recording for films, then it's you have to assist someone, or maybe you have to do some freelancing. So it actually depends on your individual choice. There are a lot of options. So mostly the practice today is they go and join a studio, be there, work for 6 months, and then later they may venture out for location sound recording.
Prashanjit has been a trainee with Shubhadeep for almost a year. He is now on the threshold of becoming a professional.
Whereas a smooth career is concerned, the beginning few years, I think it's pretty difficult because you have to learn it hands-on to get that hands-on experience from your senior engineers. So that learning experience is fascinating and difficult also, because you have to know a lot of things, not only of audio, also for video, films, what kinds of formats, everything you have to learn. There are a lot of young bands, inexperienced musicians, they also come in. So being a musician helps to guide them. This is not right, they're going off sync, or say not properly singing in tune, so you can guide them.
So will they listen to you?
Yeah, they do. They do. Surprisingly, they do.
A sound recordist may have to record location sound for film or documentary, may have to be at the mixing console for a live show or work in a sound studio and do post-production work. Post-production work involves dubbing, recording Foley effects, laying the soundtracks, and mixing the individual tracks to 1, 2, or 5 tracks. It is advisable to keep oneself constantly updated with the new technology. One may learn a sound recordist's task on the job, but one may also get a thorough training at the film schools. The more adventurous ones may start their own studio and take up sound as a business venture.
Unless you have passion, my suggestion would be that don't come into this section of the industry, because it's actually very demanding. If we compare it with other industries, then it doesn't have any time schedule of work. You might have to work for 24 hours to meet a deadline.